marketing original and the stress your vision. Beginning and audio into my software, I will extend my services to creative industries at large. With 50 million professional creators across
Je ne sais pas si vous m'entendez ou si quelqu'un m'entend là, mais j'ai une question en fait.
Oui.
Il n'y a pas une limite de 40 minutes ou 1 heure sur les meetings Zoom?
Alors ça, c'est quand on n'a pas d'abonnement.
Ok. Donc ça veut dire que le mien va se couper, c'est ça?
En théorie, non, parce que là, vous êtes invité, c'est pas vous qui hébergez.
Ok.
Donc vous tombez sous le cadre de notre licence.
Ok, sinon je redémarre le truc de toute façon s'il se passe quelque chose. Ok.
Et là,
Très bien.
oui.
On
La voix
verra
qui
ça.
vient du ciel est juste là. Tuc, tuc, tuc. Il n'a pas de caméra. Bon, là, pour l'instant, j'ai forcé la mise en évidence de cette partie-là, mais ça changera après. Alors, je vais vous laisser vous connecter. Ok.
everybody. Mexican delegation, thank you, welcome. But Stéphane, we want to say a word.
So we start the second session of the conference, and we start with Thierry BAUJARD, who knows very well the world of creative media in any sense that you give to this world. And he will present himself more in detail and talk to you about funding digital content.
Hello, hello. Yes, it's working. Good. So good afternoon to everyone. So I'm Thierry BAUJARD, and I will tell you about something a bit boring. So don't get into sleep. I'm going to talk not about creativity. We're going to talk. There's no picture in my presentation, so it's all boring. And talking about funding and financing. So that's the idea. To talk about funding in general in the different creative sector, and especially in the digital content. So yeah, that's where I'm trying to work. It's a little bit about all that. So it's a lot about creativity, of course, but a lot about business, entrepreneurship, industry, etc. So we're going to look in a little bit about all that. So this is the content of. So I've got 30 minutes. Huh? That's yeah. Okay. So. Talked a little bit about who we are, and then about these cross-sectoral challenges inside the creative industry, financing issues, financing sources, and okay, if some of you want to find some funding to get prepared for that. Okay, so very short. So I'm French, but I'm based in Germany, in Berlin. I've been living there for more than 22 years now, and I've set up a small group of companies focusing on financing for the creative sector. And I've been working before a lot for Studio Canal in my previous life in London, in Los Angeles, and then I came to Berlin because of that. So I did a lot of film finance, worked a lot on co-production and financing quite big projects as well. And then I stayed and then developing different companies based on the idea of investment network, but I will talk about that. I've got different companies where Stéphane is also involved in acceleration program for video game. And also we've been setting up different funds in different sectors, like for example in music, doing that. So, and I've been investing as well in quite a lot of companies as well. And yeah, I've got this kind of international experience. So in Media Deals, so it's been created in 2008, and basically it's a network of investors, of private investors, focusing just on the creative industries. And we are working on early stage investments, so I will talk a little bit about that after. So quite at the beginning of the project, and we are focusing mostly on audiovisuals, on video game, on music, but specifically on publishing and music tech. So new technology in music. And also we've done a bit of fashion tech as well, even though at the moment we're not doing so much on that. So, and today we have set up 2 acceleration programs to help to find the right companies for our investors. One in video game, so Spielfabrik it's called, and the other one in music tech, sorry. That is done with an Italian company called Music Innovation Hub in Milan, that we are working together on that. So basically what we do is we help both sides, so investors and companies, so entrepreneurs, creative entrepreneurs, to understand and to be better ready to find investment, so private investment basically. So we have a group of about 60 investors that are part of the network, a lot in the north of Europe, especially in the Nordics. And we are helping companies to get ready, and we are mostly helping investors to better understand how they can invest in the sector, why it's interesting to invest in the sector, what are the opportunities, the challenges of doing that, and helping them to find good projects, which is obviously one of the key problems for investors, is that they have difficulties to access good deal flow. So that's what we do with our acceleration program, is to help them to get that. And yeah, we are members of different European associations on funding. So in terms of sector, I mean, we're talking about a lot of sectors. I mean, as you know, the creative industry is made of many different types of sectors. The difficulty is that they don't have the same business model. So some are much more based on IP. So for example, on creation of intellectual property, so creation of a new project like a film or a video game. And then other ones are more based on consulting or on services, like for example, the design industry or architecture. So we cannot, it's difficult to look at all the sectors in the same way we're talking about investment. So that's why we are focusing, for example, on this 4 sector I mentioned, because that's the one where we can create mostly IP, so intellectual property, and where we can create some scalability, so be able to make some more profits based on the intellectual property. If we go into consulting, it's more difficult because basically it's limited to a potential client that will pay an amount, and that's it. Okay, so there's no scalability. So you have to consider in the creative industries different type of business model, and in that way different level of attractivity for investors or financiers. So if you look at, we did about 10 years ago, we did a study on for the European Commission about which subsector of the creative industry find funding. I mean, okay, it's not a big surprise. I think some things have changed maybe in the last 10 years, but you see it's mostly software and computer services. Yes, it's part of creative industry. Film, video game, I guess video games will be much bigger now than 11%. And then you see the less attractive, it's basically all the sectors that are based more on consulting or with a limited access to audience or limit to scalability. For example, performing arts, it's something that is happening at one day, and it's not very easy to scale, even though now with digital there are some ways, but all that. So it's, when you see that, of course, when you talk to investors, you see very quickly which sector could be more attractive for investors and which one are not. The second question that we ask investors is why they are not investing in the creative sector in general. And unfortunately, most of the time, the answers, the main reason for not doing that is, if I take from in the bottom, is the lack of skill management team. So most of the time, you know, the people are not. It's not that they, I mean, they are good people, etc. They're a good team, but you don't have someone enough who is really ready for business and looking at the financing and the management. So that's really a problem. The second thing is the lack of scalability for project. I mean, if you think about it, creative industry by definition is not really scalable because every time it's about creating something new or you know, something unique, specific. So you know, it's difficult. Having said that, for example, video game, you have scalability, the fact that you can reproduce the video game as much as you want. And what we call the marginal cost of reproducing is nearly zero, or now zero, basically. But you have other sectors where you have this lack of scalability, because, like, for example, theater, or, as I say, performing arts, because you need to recreate every time a thing, so the cost of reproducing is very high. And then, of course, the last one, the third one, which is obviously a problem, is the lack of revenue generating. So, of course, as we know in the creative sector, sometimes I mean, it's kind of black or white. So either you make a big hit and you make a lot of revenue, or it's not working and you don't make any revenue. Okay. And then maybe to finish on this part, the first one is the unlikely to find exit. So I will talk a lot about that after, but that's one of the key points for investors not to invest in creative sector, is that their goal is to invest in a company to sell it to someone else, so what we call an exit. And there are not so many people in Europe that buy this kind of companies. So if they can't see a potential exit, of course, they are not interested to invest, because that's the business model of investor. Okay? So there are many challenges for investors to invest in the creative sector, and but there are a lot of projects and a lot of companies that find funding, but they manage to respond to this kind of questions that investors are looking for. So if I try to generalize a little bit for all the creative industries, and especially digital content, I would say, it's a little bit always the same issues. The same problem is that most of the public money, for example, is based on project financing. So I need money for my game or for my film, etc. But if you talk to an investor, most of investors, 95%, will invest in a company and not in a project. Okay, so it starts like that there is a discrepancy between what you get, which is for a project, and what you get from the private money, which is for your company. So that's really a difficult point. Second is about scalability. So do you have a company a project that is scalable, or is it more what we call a lifestyle business, which you mean you do different projects and everything's fine and it's a great company, but it's not scalable. So it's not attractive for investors. Lack of exit, I talked about it. Fragmented market. I mean, as we know, it's very fragmented in Europe because of the different countries, the different languages, the different small companies everywhere. So that makes it very, very complicated for investors. And then the problem of public-private. So as I say, you have to mix public and private money, and it's sometimes quite difficult to do that for different reasons. And finally, it's quite interesting or important to find local investment. Because most of the time people are interested to see if people in the same, say in the region or know the company, etc., wants to invest, and that is sometimes difficult if you are not in a big capital city, etc., to find people who are interested to invest. So what we do basically is to work on seed investment, so around between 300 and 1 million euro to invest in companies. And I just put here some ideas about the level of the countries who are interested in that. So I mean, the Nordic countries, UK and Belgium, are countries that are very interested in. I'm talking about private investment. Are really pushing into that, and you find quite a lot of private money for that. After, I would say France, Germany, Austria, Netherlands, etc. It's a little bit in the middle. You have some, not so much. And then, yes, in some countries, like Italy and Spain, it's quite difficult today to find private funding for the creative sector. So when you talk about investment, I mean, basically one of the key points is really about how do you measure success for investors. Is what are they looking for, and what is the entrepreneur look for? And in the creative sector, it's very complex, I think, to understand what is the success. So some people, it's just to produce a game or produce a film. Other people is to sell the game or sell your film in a different region or a video platform. And then for other people, it's really to make a big hit and make a lot of money. So it's very different. And of course, I mean, okay, in terms of economic terms, it's different. But for many creative people, their goal is to develop basically their project. So in terms of financing issues, the questions to understand is, what our investors or financiers in general are looking for. And that's a big problem. That's why we have set up this network. It's basically there is a lack of knowledge, intelligence about what are they looking for with people. What's the business model of investors, financiers? Because of course it needs to fit to what they want and how they can make money. I mean, these people are not sponsors. They are not just helping because they like you or your project. They want to make money out of it. So the goal is to understand how do they make money. Okay, and depending on the people, it could be very different. Okay, how do they select company? How do they evaluate company? What is the expectation of the founders, for example, of a company? You know, how can they create value into your company when they invest in your company? And that's what they are interested. So you see, if you look at this text, at these points, there's nothing about the project. I mean, it's nothing like, is the game interesting, or the script interesting, or is it well written, or anything like that. I mean, of course, it's important, but that's really what they are looking for first. It's really understanding if this company they have in front of them, if they fit into that. Do they fit in their model? The second thing that is important is that you have a lot of different types of investors. I think there's no clear idea now about one type that invests in the creative sector, etc. You have a lot of different people, and they all have different expectation, interest, motivation. So that's really something to think about and to research as well. It's very very important. And then, I mean, basically, being an investor is a real job. That's what is important to understand. Again, it's not people with a lot of money. Most of the people who invest, they don't really have a lot of money, in fact. They have a little bit more than the average, obviously, but they invest because they want to make more money out of it. So, and the difference between what we call business angel and venture capital is business angel, it's their money, so they are investing their own money. So what we call a syndicate is that they can work or invest with other friends or group. Venture capital is very different. Venture capital, it's not their money. They are using someone else's money. And then it means as well that it's quite different in terms of what they expect or what they are looking for. And then you have also corporate investors, but in our case, it's not so developed in the sector, but you have brands as well who invest. I mean, some telecommunication company like Orange or Deutsche Telekom, they have that and they invest as well, but not so much. So that's, I think, important to understand that these people, it's a job for them. It's really a job that they do. They look at companies, they select companies, they analyze company, and they decide whether they invest or not. It's really, there is a big method behind it, and it's not just, I like the people and I'm doing that. Something very important to understand in terms of business model for the venture capital company is that when you look at roughly their portfolio, because they invest always in a portfolio, so a certain number of companies, most of the time, 50% or more, they lose money. Okay, they invest X and they get less than X. Okay, so at the end, they've lost already 50%. Then, okay, around 35%, 30%, they get their money back and they get maybe a little bit more. 10%, they return a bit more, but only around 5% or less are making more than 3 times or 10 times. Okay? And this is it's the key thing to understand, is that it means, because of that, it means that for each project they invest, they hope that this project will reimburse and make money for all the portfolio. Okay? So we were talking with different big venture capital in Luxembourg, for example. They were looking for each company they invest in to return at least times 100, because they know that they have to find one to do that to reimburse the rest. So to make money as a venture capital is very, very difficult, because only 5%. So you have to choose very well, because 5% only will bring you some money and needs to reimburse for the rest. So that's really what you need to start thinking when you try to understand what they are looking for. That's an important point. So basically, they need to understand, I mean, it's interesting questions as well most of the time, is why is it a business? Is it really a business? Many people have ideas, they want to do a company, etc. Is it a business? Can it make money or not? Is it the right time? Too early, too late, it's difficult. Why is it the right time now? And is it the right team in place? So of course the right team is never the perfect team, because as a new company or a company developing, you don't have all the people because you don't have so much money, but do they have the right core team to develop the project? And then really understanding who is your customer, what is the customer value, and can you do it with the right cost. Okay, so really understanding the business model and how you can make money with that. So going really into the details and going into the customer value is very important. Why should these people go there? So basically the idea is typical is to have a problem, to bring a solution, and then really having this USP that makes something interesting and that the people can invest in and create value. One point that is today very important is sustainability. Definitely investors are looking into that. It's maybe not the only criteria. I mean, it's not the only criteria, that's for sure. But more and more, most of the venture capital company or business angel wants to look at that and want to make sure that what they invest in are looking really at sustainability, which is not, I mean, as you know, I guess, it's not just about the environmental issues, but really in sustainability. So long-term development, scalability, and developing the company in the right direction, because that's basically their portfolio. So in terms of financing sources, so I'm not sure I've got the time, but I've done a list that I can send you if you want of the different types of sources for companies and for projects. And for each one, I've put some description. So the type of funding, the source, where it's coming from, the money, how they intervene in the investment, what sort of liabilities they're asking, what is the business model for the financier, so the people who invest, what's their business model in that case, the financial risk, the selection process, if they need a guarantee or not, and the type of financing range. So he can give you an idea about what sort of players, from a bank to a venture capital to a business angel to, I mean, there are different types of crowdfunding, etc. So it gives you an idea of how it works and what their different perceptions, basically, and motivation to invest. So basically, to go quickly, so that's what is in the paper, but you have project financing in the creative sector, like in film or game, where you have public money, you have different cash rebate, tax credit, and then you have venture capital that could be with institutional or with angels, and you can have crowdfunding. So that's definitely for projects, so a film or a game. But then you have company funding, so you have also public money. I mean, for example, BPI in France is very strong into that. Private investment, of course, private equity, bank loan. The banks are only lending to a company, not to a project. And crowd investment, so not crowdfunding, but crowd investment. Basically, it's a group of people who invest in the company and not in the project. And basically, these are some criteria for financier, again, is really looking at the vision, the team, customer, market potential, the scalability, valuation is very important. What could be the exit? Are you open to an exit or not? I mean, this kind of thing. That's what they are looking for. They are looking into in details, and that's what they want. Okay, so I think going to go a bit faster. So basically, what financier wants to see is to see clients. Whatever you're doing, people want to see how you can access clients and show that you can get some revenue. That's very important. If there is no revenue or no sign of potential revenue, that's obviously much more difficult. Then you have public funding. So, for example, I gave the example of Europe, what Creative Europe is giving. So quite a big amount for this kind of thing. So media is more for game and film. Culture is the rest of the creative sector. And now there is this cross-sectoral approach to try to stop having this mix, this silo thinking, but that the different sectors work together. So that's something that is definitely growing, even though, as you see, it's quite small today. So the type of financier, that's the kind of type of financier you will find or you will look for when you develop your project. So, between less than 50,000 to up to 5 million or more. And basically, we are trying, and I think most of the creative sector is in this area, between the first people, what we call the family, friends, and fools, give money, and then the grants, crowdfunding, and then going slowly to business angel and public banks, commercial banks, etc. So that's where we are doing. Some family offices now are quite interested in creative sector at the moment, even though I would say just now it's a bit difficult because of the Ukraine war. There are a lot of questions at the moment, but otherwise I think family offices have moved quite a lot in the creative sector to diversify, to find different things, and also it's a change of generation, so you have more younger people doing that, who have played games, for example, or use much more media and are more interested in that. So just to finish, if you want to look at how to access funding for content, I mean, definitely thinking about what is your business model. Is it a service company? Is it IP? Is it a brand? What is your need for financing? Is it coming from clients? Is it a loan? Is it equity investment? Of course, all of them have a different price and a different business model. So it's not like, okay, I need everything. It's, okay, which one could be the right one for me? And understanding what's your profile for that. That means, what do you want to do with this money? And I can tell you, we are very surprised when we talk to people. Most of the people, they don't have a clear idea about what they want to do with the money. I mean, they need money to pay people, etc. But I think you need to be much clearer on what you want to do with this money. Is it development? Is it technology? Is it sales, marketing? When do you need that? Are you going to need to raise more money later? What is the added value that you bring to the market? So these kind of questions are very important to understand for the financier, to look at that. And then, always quite difficult, is what do you offer to a financier? So do you offer a minority, majority, part of the company? Are they a board member? Do they have a voting right for the strategy or not? And which valuation? So basically, that's the price of your company. How do you develop that? Is it based on turnover? Is it based on future turnover? Is it based on the vision you've got? There are many ways, and it's very subjective, of course, but you need to work on that, because at the end, people will be asking, okay, I'm buying 20% of your share, okay, how much is your company? And then it's a big discussion. So it's really, really an important point. So, and basically, to finish, you need to get face-to-face with financier, and as I say, the research part is very, very important. If you don't understand who is in front of you, what sort of business model, what are they looking for, what sort of funding they have, when they have, what is their, their need objective, what they are interested in, it's not going to work. And it's a lot of work to do that, so you need really to get prepared, and the research part is very, very important. And then to approach investors, I mean, of course, the best way is to be recommended by people who got already money from them, but you can go to a lot of investment forum where you can participate, and of course, also contacting them. So finishing with the pitching part, so I mean, I guess you know that, but it's basically, most of the time it's very short, so like 5 minutes, and then some Q&A, a presentation, you can do visual, like video, and what you need is really to do a very structured presentation and a clear offer to investors, so that they know at the end what they are looking for. And basically, I would say you have to look into that. It's a kind of start with how to retain attention to people, because you have to imagine that they are seeing maybe 10, 20 people one after one, and they are bored, tired, and they don't want to listen to you. So, how do you get them interested? And then to talk about the team, the management, because at the end, that's really what they are interested. Of course, your product, but don't go too much into details of the product, because at the end, it's not really the main point. I mean, they want to have an idea of what it is, but after they go in details. But more, the market is very important, figures about what you want to do, revenues, and then what do you offer? It's very important, and how you're going to implement this access to funding. If you get 1 million, what are you going to do with it? How Do you have the people to do that? And a lot of investors, that's what they told us. They say, okay, this company seems interesting, they have a good product, but we don't think they can implement it. They cannot do it. So that's a very important point. Thank you very much. Do we have time for a question? Or, yeah.
So who needs money?
Hope it was not too boring.
Did you prepare a good pitch? Some questions?
Thank you very much for this presentation. Marc Monjou, I'm the director of European School of Visual Arts in Angoulême, Lézy. Thank you once more. Really, in fact, in art schools, we are not used to hear such presentations. Yeah. Of course, you understand that. But what I would like to answer is if your clients, the investors, are interested in research, because research is supposed to investigate in new territories that can be fruitful for investments. So I would like to know about, related to your own experience, what you think about these supposed interesting territories that research is supposed to produce. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, basically, they are doing a lot of research. Investors are doing a lot of research, and most of the time, I mean, it depends who, but most of the time, they are really people who are really researching markets all the time and looking for new trends and ideas. So they are doing it. Obviously, it could be interesting to see with them how you can help them. The difficulty, as you said at the introduction, the difficulty is really the level of business that you're going to research. Because obviously, that's what they are really focusing on, is to find the companies who really make already some money in the market development. So they are not. It's not that they are not interested in general, in development of new sectors, etc. But they very quickly they want to go into very business and economic details. So I mean, there are a lot of people, mixing business school and art school, trying to develop that, and I think that could be something interesting. And then the second thing is when they look at an interesting project, that's where they need a lot of research, because that's what they do, the due diligence. So they are basically trying to understand the market and how these people, is there a vision behind it, etc. That's where they need a lot of research. And, I really think that, for example, younger people who, a bit where this business is going could be really interesting. The difficulty is, again, the business level of sophistication and the timing. They always need something very quickly and very in-depth. So normally, we do this kind of thing. They commission people, experts to say, okay, in the next week, you're going to look at all the competition, etc. But of course, it's very important, and that's what they need. And we're trying to educate a lot of investors that are not in creative sector. And that's one of the problem we have is to present to them some interesting cases and interesting trends so that they understand, okay, is it worth going into that direction or not? Okay.
Other question? Oh, I have one question.
Of course.
When I
do
was
it.
when I was in Cap Digital, the Paris Region Cluster Board, they made a study about investing investor investing in video games. They asked to investor, do you want to invest in video games? It was 6 or 7 years ago, so maybe it has changed. But the answer was clearly no. And I asked, there are teams in Cap Digital, I asked to the woman who was in charge of the investor teams, and I said, can you give me more explanation? And she said, if you want to invest in video games, you need a crystal ball. because nobody knows why this game worked and why this one didn't work. So there is no, I would say, scalability or something like futurology of video games. What do you think about that?
It's completely right. I mean, we talk to the people all the time, but I think you need to separate two things. That's why I was talking about project financing and company investment. It's very different. I mean, project financing is about finding a hit, okay, which is like film. You know, you hope that it's going to be a hit, and 99% of the time it's not a hit, okay? But the idea of investors, that's why private investors are not doing that. They are investing in companies who will develop different games. And again, 10 games in maybe 5 years, or 6 years, or 10 years, and then from the 10 games, hopefully one will make some money. Okay, so that's one way to do it. So if you say to people, do you want to invest in a video game, nobody will be interested. But if you want to invest in a company who develop a portfolio of games, it's interesting. Second thing is really about technology for game. So many of these companies in the video game sectors that find funding is because they develop a technology for the ecosystem and not really content, or as well as content. So there is something attached to it that is scalable. Again, the problem of game is not scalable. So, but I would say it has changed a little bit, you're right, because after the COVID, people are more interested. And we see more people, you know, wanted to see how they can be involved in video game, definitely. But for all the creative sectors, that's the answer is always that. You explain to them, say, okay, at the end, no, I don't think so. So it's really, really difficult to do that. But there are some really some investment. There are some big investment, in fact, in the sector. But it's very small. I mean, it's really you know, the 5% that can get some funding, and it's definitely not about one project. Definitely not. And it's not good to recommend that as well. Anyway.
I will give the mic to Dorian, who has a question. But to complete my question, from the point of view you have developed, I think that video game is not far from a movie. When you make a movie, it's a hit or not a hit. But movie find investors.
No.
No.
Who is investing in game? Either in film? Nobody. In Europe, nobody. Nobody. It's really nobody is doing that. You have sometimes people who based on tax advantage. So they invest not because it's a film, it's because they make a tax saving, okay? And of course you have other players who invest, so like publishers in game or distributors in film. But it's not private equity, meaning their business model is different. A publisher, their business model is not to sell the shares to someone else, it's to sell the game to as many places as possible. It's a different business model. But in film, there's nobody there. The only people who invest in film today are a few people in the UK and in America for Hollywood movies, where they can put a big amount of money, and you know, they just do 10 or 20 movies per year maximum, and these are very big movies that are sold everywhere. But in Europe, there's nobody doing that.
Hola, Dorian, from Tech de Monterrey. By experience, I made a company several years ago, and the value of the company was really known from the first angel ventures that we had. So, and we shared part of the board, and that's from that we had the value of the company. But generally in creative industries and video games, when we have an angel, when they ask us, the value is, okay, the heads that you have on the studio, the computers, and maybe the value of the IP, depending if you are sharing as well the IP with this person that is investing. I don't know if you can maybe clarify or give your opinion.
I mean, it really depends on which situation you are and what do you bring to them. I mean, if you bring a technology system, for example, that you can value, it's maybe different. If you, I mean, basically, if you are developing a video game and you are 3 people and the game is still in prototype and you don't know how many you're going to sell, yes, the value is very low, definitely. If it's your first game, I mean, okay, if you've done 10 games and 1 or 2 were very successful, you can start building the value. But yeah, it's the way. I mean, and of course, it's like an auction thing. I mean, basically on their side, they're trying to get as cheap as possible, and you try to get as much value as possible. So it's quite difficult to work on that. After, it's a question of what sort of money. I mean, the way I look at it most of the time is I look at what this company is looking for money. I mean, are they looking for, I don't know, 50,000 euro or 1 million? Okay. And you have to start from that, okay, to access the 1 million. And if you want to sell 25% of your company, you say, okay, I don't want someone majority, so up to 50, but let's say 25. Well, your company has to be at least 4 million valuation. Okay, so you can start backwards and say, okay, I need to reach 4 million as 100%. So what do I have to get to the 4 million? And then going back to the people and say, this is my company, it's worth 4 million. If you want 25%, it's going to be 1 million. Okay, so you need to work on what you want at the end in terms of funding. And what I'm recommending a lot is to do it step by step. So for a young company, if you are looking for example, 1 or 2 million, it's going to be too heavy. I mean, your valuation is not going to be 4 million, it's going to be 1 million. So if you're looking for 1 million, it's basically 100%. So you do it in steps. So you do first, I raise 200,000, and then I get a bit of percentage, and then I move forward to get a bit more money every time. But it's difficult, huh? And of course, again, the investor on the other side knows that. Knows you have difficulties in valuation, and knows that, okay, in 6 months you will need to raise again money. So it's all fine. They are waiting and know that in 6 months you will come back and you can maybe work on the valuation again. So it's really quite complex to do that. And it takes a lot of time, and it's not always successful. And I always say, I mean, private investment is not for everybody. It's really for a small part of a small share of the company. But you have plenty of other ways to do it. You know, public funding, crowdfunding, loans, etc. You have other ways. For me, the main point is to avoid wasting time in trying to raise money for something that you will never raise money. We see many companies who, year after year, they're trying to raise money where their business model will never attract investors. Okay? But of course, the problem is that they don't see anybody else. The banks are very difficult, as we know. Crowdfunding is a lot of time, and it's not much at the end. So you have to do it step by step, definitely. Or to develop really a technology advance, and then you can raise much more money on that.
And with your experience, the investors that you have in your group are investing more in IPs or on the companies?
So
if there is a percentage.
They're investing in companies, that's all. And then in the companies, I would say it's more service, I mean, product, new technology services. But I would say, I don't know, maybe 60% that and still 40% IP. I mean, people are still very attracted when there is a good team, a good portfolio of potential games. I mean, people are interested to get that because that's where you can get a lot of revenue if it works.
Yeah, I want to ask, in France, some mutual funds called Sofica for financing products, film products, not companies. Yeah. Do you have any data about the results of this kind of financing? And do you know if there are equivalent schema in other countries, European countries?
So the Sofica is existing only in France. This kind of the exact tax system like that is only existing in France. It's very limited because you can, I think it's maximum 5% of a budget that you can have Sofica. It's been used by many companies, as you know. Most of the Sofica are in fact associated with big companies. You know, like TV channels, big production companies like EuropaCorp, because to be able to raise the money towards the people, it's very difficult. So in fact, it's quite limited and it's always going back to the same people. The problem I've got with that is that you don't really educate investors. I mean, as I say, people do that because they don't care if it's this film or this film. They don't care. They have a tax advantage, and that's it. So I think it's going to be reduced. Been in discussion to stop it for many years, and I think at some point it will be stopped. Then you have other schemes in Europe. I mean, something similar, much bigger, was in Germany in the 90s, where it was crazy. Most of the Hollywood movies were financed in Germany for tax advantage. And then there were a lot of problems and people went in prison, etc. So it stopped from one day to another. UK, it's the same. They did the same thing. And then many people ended up in prison as well. So they have stopped this kind of thing. And because of basically the idea is that you have a lot of intermediary in between, that in fact use most of the money to do the tax advantage, to do the due diligence, etc. And then, in fact, it's not really at the end that you use the tax advantage. It's really you are using a mechanism basically to access this kind of projects. I think the one that is the most interesting today is in Belgium. It's the tax shelter in Belgium. I mean, I guess you know for film, it's very big. And now they just opened it for game since 1st of January. And it's a little bit different. It's for companies to when they have an excess of revenue, of profit, they can invest some money in cultural products, so in cinema, animation, performing arts, and now video game. And this is the one that is maybe the most interesting and is big enough because you can really get up to 30% from this kind of thing. But again, it's not educating the people. It's again they do it and because they get a tax advantage, but they don't care what sort of product is it. So it's a little bit problematic. So there's nothing really in Lithuania. There is something like that as well. I mean, in different countries you have different models. Not so much, in fact, about private people. Apart from France, Lithuania, and I think that's it for private. Belgium is company, is corporate, but it's not really educating the people. And on the long term, I don't think it really works. We are more interested to get the people to understand, to raise the expertise in the sector, to be able to understand what is interesting, what is not interesting for them. And really understanding how the market works, how the market changes, and in which direction they should go. But it's a lot of work, and it's not easy because most of people invest in what they know. Okay, so if you have been an internet someone who makes money in internet, I mean basically they want to invest again in internet. So we are not very far from the internet on video game, for example. But they look at that, okay, they are more open, they are more interested, but at the end they say, I understand better internet, I should invest. So that's why, for example, in the Nordics, especially Sweden, Finland, the video game is so developed with private money. It's because the people who made money in the game sector, they reinvested and invested in the game sector back, which is not really the case, for example, in France or Germany. Not so much. And that's really one key issue that we have, is that the people who made money in the gaming or in the film sector, they didn't really invest back to the sector because they knew maybe that it was not really interesting. But that's what's happening in the Nordics. And I think in the Nordics, they have a really different mindset for that. I mean, they really like this idea of bringing back to the community what they've got. It's much more in their values. I think that, for example, in France or Germany or Spain, or and it's the key of I think for me, it's really why in Sweden it's so developed and they make money. And just to finish on that, in Sweden, I don't know if you know, but they have created a NASDAQ, so a stock market just for video game. So to do IPOs very easily in Sweden. So they can raise a lot of money in Sweden. And that exists in Stockholm and a little bit in Warsaw, in Poland as well, at a smaller scale. But in Sweden, there are many companies, like I think Atari moved from Paris to Stockholm as well to raise on the market there. And many people manage to raise a lot of money from that.
What do you think about social funding? No, with platforms where people
so crowdfunding,
give just small money, but
crowdfunding or crowd investment. Yeah, I mean, as we know, crowdfunding works, but it's a lot of work. It's not a lot of money at the end. So, but yes, I think it's important. Maybe not necessarily as a source of funding, but more as a proof that the game is interested to people. So that could be a way. And crowd investment, so investing in companies, I think it's interesting, but it's not so developed in continental Europe. In the Nordics, again, you have a lot of, in Finland, you have 2 platforms that do a lot of that. So it's definitely interesting. The problem is, if they want to raise much more money after, there is a lot of legal questions about when you have 200 people who co-invested together. Okay, you put it in one company, etc., but it can create some difficulty, legal difficulties, but it's definitely interesting to do that, I think. Okay, so it was not so boring at the end. That's good. Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you.
And the next talk by Thibault HENRIET, I don't know how to pronounce in English, HENRIET, and he will talk about creativity and artificial intelligence.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. And Axel, thank you for inviting me to the conference. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys. So I'm here to talk about something slightly... Oh, sorry, it's already playing. Something slightly more controversial, which is artificial intelligence within the creative industries. I think we've already approached the subject earlier today in the conference room, so I think we can approach this really as a conversation. We've seen people who see it as a risk, others who see it as an opportunity. This is a point of view into a startup for which I'm the founder. And before I delve into the subject, maybe I'd like to introduce myself. So I'm Thibault. I have a background where I studied at Sciences Po in Paris, but then I did kind of a 180 and moved to New York, where I became an international project manager to contemporary artists in painting, photography, sculpture, video, multimedia installations, for whom I handled artwork production and exhibitions in museums as well as their galleries. And from that experience, I built a first company in art and technology, which was a platform that fostered collaboration between artists, museums, galleries, and collectors. I was also an exhibiting artist myself at the time, and then I switched altogether once again and moved back to France and became head of operations to a New York scale-up in fashion tech, for whom I developed all of their Paris ops. And then last September, I joined a venture capital firm as a resident and started developing awen, which is the project I'm going to present today, which means inspiration in Britain, where I'm from. So I'll start with a little video to intro the project, then introduce you to the global business perspective, maybe show you a bit of the product that we're building, and then go into a Q&A session. What's really important to know there is that it's super new. It's only been 3 months that we're working on this. So it's also a good space to challenge and discuss your impressions of the project. So here we go for the video.
Hi there, I'm Awen. It means inspiration in Brittany, where both my inventors are from. Why am I here? To expand your creativity. I know how hard it can be at work as a creator, how much time you spend searching for the right idea, how difficult it can be to give it the form you imagine, the pressure you face to remain original, and the stress you're under with strict deadlines. I understand it all, and I want to help you. I was born out of generative AI, a new technology that enables you to give your ideas a form at unprecedented speed. Using open source foundation models, I was fine-tuned to integrate with your professional workflows in a unique manner. I provide you with the ability to connect your inspiration sources with my generative AI technologies so you remain in control of your vision. Beginning with images and sketches, I will support those who work in advertising, gaming, design, and visual art industries. As I integrate text, video, 3D, and audio into my software, I will extend my services to creative industries at large. With 50 million professional creators across the globe and 40 million more to come by 2030, I envision to become your partner. Let me introduce you to my founders. Thibault, my CEO, worked for multidisciplinary creatives in New York City before founding a company in contemporary arts. Yannick, my CTO, is a doctor in machine learning and has led R&D teams at large companies. You and us can build something new. So write down my address and join our community. Let me help you generate your best ideas. Welcome to a place where you can connect your inspirations with our AI platform to imagine, conceive, and create individually and collaboratively. Yours truly, Awen.
All right. So the vision here of our project is really to expand human creativity. So clearly we're placing ourselves on the side of professional creators. And what I mean by professional creators is any person whom through their professional activity creates... Oops, sorry, I don't know what's going on. So yeah, what I mean by professional creators is anyone who, through their activities, creates tangible or intangible goods, whether they're physical or digital. So storytelling, we're really focusing on the concept creation stage of the creation value chain, which is the very beginning of the creative process, which counterintuitively is actually the longest part of the creative process. So the part where you conceive, imagine, explore ideas before they're thrown into production is actually the most crucial part of the creative process. Then comes production, distribution, consumption, and then you start all over again. What's super interesting also to note is that the beginning of the creative process actually shares common ground between professional creators. So when you were talking earlier about production, you know, when you had the graph of all the creative industries, what an architect does, what a video game person does, what a fashion designer does, actually changes more and more at the step of production rather than at the concept creation stage. The concept creation is really characterized by the manipulation of different media, image, iconography, text, sketching, audio, video, etc. But it really starts as a phase where people research, visualize, and explore their ideas before they're validated. So when we started the project, we interviewed a whole lot of creative professionals in video games, in design, in advertising, in fashion, in beauty, in a whole ton of industries, cinema also. And what interestingly came out of that time is that it's quite painful. professional creators really expressed pain in the difficulty of finding and researching the ideas that they have in mind. The pressure also to remain original, because they're always competing for originality, and the stress that's associated with that, with the deadlines that they face within an industry. And of course, all this quite culminates with frustration in communications with all of their collaborators, whether it's with their creative peers or with strategic and marketing teams that they may interfere with. We have a belief that generative AI is actually a pain solver for all of these issues, in the sense that it enables them to research and visualize ideas at unprecedented speed. But out of all the interviews that we conducted, what professional creators expressed is that tools such as DALL-E, Midjourney, etc., actually don't provide them enough control over what they have in mind. Creative professionals usually arrive not as a blank page, but full of references, and they have actually an intuition of what they want to start creating around. And so the question then became, how do we bridge AI models with that level of what they called their imaginary museum to actually enter in a dialogue that enables them to, well, use the AI in that context. There is also a big fear, which is, can it steal or will it steal our jobs? Well, this prevents indeed widespread adoption, but it also lies an opportunity for us to think about a product that really understands professional creators and helps them use Gen AI in the framework of their activities. How does that work concretely? Well, there's a momentum at the moment, which is that a lot of AI models have become open source. Open source models mean that they've become accessible to anyone. So you can take the code, I can take the code. What's interesting is that you have different types of models per media. You have some for image, you have some for text, you have some for 3D, for sketching, etc. And so the first step in our process is actually to consolidate those models together in order to bring them together and make them communicate with one another. But that's not really enough. The second layer, which is the very important part of our project, is the proprietary layer that we built, which enables creators to actually customize the model to themselves. What that means concretely is that everyone has a common ground, a common basis, but depending on the data that you will feed to the model, it creates a unique branch off, which personalizes the model to you, your taste, and your projects. Also, that doesn't really make it useful if you don't have an application layer on top that enables you to use it, which is what we develop in the third part. It's a web application that enables you to access all of these elements and leverage these technologies in the frame of your activities. So then again, the vision really is to expand human creativity. The mission is to help creators generate their best ideas. And the tool is a web SaaS where you can imagine, conceive, and create by connecting your inspirations with our multimedia AI platform individually and collaboratively. So if you like, I'm going to show you what of today is what we call product mockups. So it's going to give you a bit of insight of what the tool would look like, so how you would be interacting with it. The visuals you're going to see are actual generations of our AI model. So these are real, it's just the design of the mockup is still very TBD and up in the air. Again, it's been 3 months, so I'll ask for your kindness there. Oops. So the idea is that once you have logged in, you access a creation project management interface, which is kind of just an organizational level where you can store your projects, store your assets, store, anything you have in the frame of a project. I'm sorry, it's not super ideal. Régie? Sorry, 1 second. Ah, il faut passer la fin. Ah oui, ok. C'est plus pour la navigation, parce que... Ah, mais ça ne me permet pas de... J'arrive pas à slider. À bouger, mais plus rapidement qu'en utilisant les flèches. Ah, c'est le bouton du milieu? Ouais, mais pour aller vers la... Ah, merci. C'est bon. Merci. Merci, Axel. So yeah, I was saying a creative project management interface where you can access all of the projects you have ongoing. You can also share that with your team members. You can access everything that's going on within a project, whatever has been generated, etc. Now, the heart of the project is actually the creation interface. This is an infinity board where you're able to manipulate image, text, and sketch and access affiliated AI functionalities that are associated with each media. So let's start with image. When I was telling you about the possibility to customize the model, what that means is that you're going to be able to teach the model both objects and style through a very simple process, which would be to actually just codify a name of something you want the model to learn and give it a series of images which later loads that object or that style within the AI model. So here's an example for a demo we did at Chanel. They did their latest fashion show in Senegal, in Dakar. And so we did an example about, sorry, I'm super bad with Windows. An example of learning what the classical tailleur would be with the style of a wax imprimé. So once you train and create those libraries, you can actually use them in the frame of your generations. Does everyone here know what a generation is or not? Yes? No? Okay, so it's basically when you enter a text description, and out of that text description, the AI is going to generate an image that matches at best what you have described. So by teaching these elements of models within the text description, what's interesting is that you're able to control really what the AI is going to provide you. So here we have an example. It's not loading. Okay. Sorry, it's not loading. I guess the internet is a bit slow. Okay, this one has loaded. So this was an example we did at Cartier, the jeweler, where we taught the AI the style of the sketching the designers have. And so Cartier is a house that works a lot with nature, so we also taught the object of a snowflake to create sketches of a ring. And so we learned both the sketching style and the object, and generated sketches that resemble the Cartier style, but integrating the notion of a snowflake within the drawing. Transposing that to you, I should have a Ubisoft example, but it doesn't seem to be loading. Sorry about that. Yep, no. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, sorry, the media isn't loading, so I can't really show you. Well, that's handy. Sorry about that. All right, bear with me for a minute, and if it doesn't work, we'll skip to the next part. Sorry about that. All right, it doesn't look like it's gonna work. Okay, I'll just voice over and you'll try and picture yourself and throw you in the imagination. So yeah, idea of generation is basically from head to screen, your ability to give a form to your vision by associating both styles and objects. So here, right there is loading an example. We're currently in discussion with Ubisoft, and we were using the example of Assassin's Creed, but inspired by medieval Japan. So we fed both what an assassin is as an object and inspiration images of medieval Japan. And so he generated these outputs of an assassin in the style of a samurai, which, you know, depicts then again the notion of the shadow over the face, etc. I can't show you the comparison with DALL-E because it's not loading, but DALL-E made just super approximate drawings. So the idea here is that you can really become precise with what you have in mind, which at the stage of concept creation becomes quite interesting because, you know, you can do mock-ups super fast. Below is again the example for Chanel with the wax printing. So what's interesting here is that it generated a whole bunch of images that actually took both the style of the vintage photography that we fed the AI, also the style of the clothes, as well as contemporary images snapshots. You'll see errors, like here she has 3 feet, so you know it's quite approximate, it kind of bugs, but you know it's quite easy and convenient and intuitious to just associate the ideas you have in head and see what they come up with. Here's an example of a Chanel bag also that we had associated with crystal, and so by doing the association you come to generations that show the sum of the two. And here you have an example of what DALL-E did. It's only one image, but they didn't understand the concept of crystal or anything. So that's for generation, but then generation is not super precise and it can be approximate, so we also want to provide you with the ability to edit the images that you generate. So the idea is that you can actually, it's not loading again, but let's say you have an image right there. You'll be able to AI instruct the image and tell them, okay, I want to add a moon back there and I want to add fireworks, or I want to replace that person right there, etc. And it'll do it for you. So then again, the editing aspect becomes super quick. Another interesting point in the frame of inspiration or mock-up is the merging. So you know earlier we were talking about how creative professionals sometimes say, okay, I'd like to associate these two things together. When it becomes possible from a perspective point of view, you can actually mix images together and create a unique image that is the sum of two. So it's not loading, so I can't show you again, but I'll send you guys an email. Another point which can be interesting in for concept artists in video games is the creation of mood boards. The creators are able to enter keywords and a few reference of images, or AI will run a semiotic analogy of what are the concepts that are shared across names and images and generate further imagery as well as correlated lexical field. So that's for the image, and then we switch to text, where we're developing a brainstorming tool, because the concept creation phase is also characterized by the research aspect. And so you're able to set a context within the AI, let's say the brief of your project or any context that you may want to define, and enter in a conversational chat with your AI. So it resembles what most of you may have seen as ChatGPT, to the difference here, then again, that you can customize it to a specific context, which is really, then again, our added value proposal. And then you're able to sketch. It's not going to load, but the idea is kind of like a child. Remember when we were kids and we would draw out stuff and do collage? Well, it's kind of like that. You can super quickly draw out something, cut out elements from other imagery, and the AI actually stitches the components together and does an automatic rendering, which, you know, then again, in the speed to giving form to the idea is quite convenient. So this brings you to a board where you can do a lot of different stuff. And again, you can collaborate as a team, you can bring elements anywhere, save what you want to save, invite others to come have a look, which in the frame of project management, well, can help in that whole concept creation phase. I think that's about it. If we look, I guess it's important to talk about the market overview, because it's a sector that's really booming, and you're going to get a lot of proposals in different streams of industries. We place ourselves then again at that concept creation aspect, and I think to go back to what you were saying about production, we don't intervene there. for a lot of reasons, which are first the legal one. We don't believe that AI-generated goods should be used commercially as of now, just because there's a whole gray area on who's the authorship and who is owned by what. So it's different from producing actually content. And then what we bring here to the table is the level of control over the outputs that you generate, which for us is again a true power for the creator to go deeper and deeper into their ideas and really like picture them. So there you go. Sorry again about the product demo. I'm guessing you didn't understand a lot, so I'll take any questions you may have.
Questions?
Now, let me see if I understand. It's basically a different set of AIs packaged in a single tool, right?
So that's the first layer. If I go back to the presentation, what you're referencing is this.
Exactly.
So this is the set of different AI models together within one tool, but then on top of that, there's also the private layer, which is your layer. That's not mine, it's not theirs, it's not theirs. It's how you communicate with those layers, make it your own AI. So it's a double degree differentiation.
Oh, you answered my question before I made it. Thank you. So basically, what you're proposing is that, like I train it for myself.
Yeah.
So it replicates my style. For example, if I have a very distinct style of drawing, I could fit it with my work, and it should replicate my style of drawing, right?
If you instruct it to. And that's also one important element I want to insist on. The tool is completely dependent on the instruction you give it. So if you don't teach it anything, it's not going to change. And again, where it brings you within the ideation process is codependent to the dialogue that you have. And that's really a belief also for us to ensure that the creator remains in control and has the power really to guide the AI, and that the AI really is just an assistant. For us, it's like a little creative conscience, because to bring a broader perspective on your question, you have the idea of when you're working within a specific project, you may have different types of inspirations and references coming in, and then another project will be completely different, but usually a person has still a common backbone within their style. And so we're also working on how the tool can learn on a global basis from all of the different projects that a person has made, and can learn of all of the different styles, combine them together, and get more and more personal, if I may say.
All right. And how are you proposing to balance, how do you say, everyone has a very distinct approach to, for example, image tagging. And how you're proposing to make that work together across different authors, because everyone is going to tag everything for their own work, and maybe it doesn't work globally, or...
Do you mean file naming?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
Okay. Well, it really depends on the type of user, because we've been speaking at organization-wide levels. So if you're looking at a company like Chanel, for instance, they have system-wide organization. A freelancer, an individual artist, is going to be completely autonomous on that. So we provide them freedom completely on the naming, but as soon as you get to an organization level, we really just follow the guidelines of the company, because it's really what they have put in place. And if they haven't, we can advise on that, because it's true, and it's an important element to note that the notion of heritage, when you're speaking with a company like Ubisoft or in beauty or in luxury or whatever, they have all of this history that they capitalize on. And so that in itself is a super strong element. And so we've been into discussions right now of how can we model the globality of a history from an image perspective, from a text perspective, from a language perspective, throughout time, etc. And for that, they already have a system in place. Had they not, we were discussing on how to structure that and input the model with a certain level of structure. Another element interesting is that if you feed, we're currently working on AI tagging. So rather than going through file naming, the AI is also able to read what an image is. So it's able to read the feeling, it's able to read the colors, the description, etc. And so if you were to search, just like on Google, within a library that is AI tagged, well, the description of what you're thinking about would actually match what the AI is searching for, from a descriptive standpoint, precise.
About the third layer, as you mentioned, the fact that you have the board and you can share with the team, it's kind of mirror board that is so used so far. How is it possible not only to have a board and share your ideas, but you are able to walk through as well the process of someone, just like double click on the final, the composed image,
and you get the history,
and be able to see. Yeah, I feel that this can be an opportunity for this tool.
Yeah, it's exactly the plan actually, because what we were referencing in the frustration with communication is actually the ability to explain how you came about an idea, and sometimes that's extremely long, sometimes it's also extremely blurry, and sometimes words don't really match up to the description of visuals. So actually you're able to save the history of all of the changes / associations / whatever you've made into a chain of events that lead you to a final idea. About that sharing aspect also, we understand that the context of creativity can be intimate at times. You don't necessarily want to share everything, so those boards, you're also able to share a given view within the whole board. I may provide you the ability to just see this, where I can see the whole global picture. So it's totally up to the person.
And so far, did you make some testing in companies, but in a huge scale?
Not in a huge scale. We're starting with really small groups, and it's also our wish, because right now we're really focusing also on getting the feedback of the creatives themselves. Everything I've just shown you is more of a vision. It's what we've designed out of getting all of this feedback in all of our interviews, and it seems that it echoes super well with our prospects at the moment, but there's certainly a lot of stuff we haven't even thought of that we want to be able to integrate there. So starting small, and when you look to talk about startups, as you were speaking, when you look at the lifespan of a young early stage startup, it's more important to grow organically at that stage and make sure you build a product that's actually useful and has appeal to the audience. So one step at a time.
I'm really enthusiastic with your idea, your product, even if it's not yet available. If I get the correct information, I'm sorry. I'm as a lawyer. I have got my own way of thinking about new products, and I can't ignore some kind of one particular problem for me from my really specific perspective, and it's unfair competition, la concurrence déloyale in French. I mean, it's a real amazing tool of creation for internal teams, internal creation team of a particular company. No problem. You're looking at you are giving example with Chanel, Ubisoft. Okay, it's really interesting. And now, what if it's a competitor who just train, as you give permission to train an AI layer with a competitor style, and given the consigne, given the line, the idea not to be too close.
Of course. Great question. Thanks for asking.
Sorry.
No, please. No. This is exactly the questions we should be asking. So first off with that, When you speak about the concept creation phase, that's actually how we also protect ourselves, just because the stage is not into production nor commercial usage, which means you're actually looking at more inspiration and conceptualization. Speaking about competitors, I'm not going to cite anyone, but I've been in many meetings where competition is publicly alleged and used as a mean of inspiration or reference as such. And, you know, that's what they do. But then you get to the context of legal is what's the end usage and what are we going to change that makes it our own, which is why I came back to this slide, because on the concept creation aspect, it doesn't make that big a difference than from what happens now. And that's what I was telling you earlier about Google. Technically, I'm entirely free to go anywhere on the web, scrap anything I want, put it on a board and kind of think, okay, maybe I'll take this and that and that. We're not doing anything different. We're making it seen as different, but it's technically the same. Now, it is the user's responsibility, and that's important to point out, if they make a commercial usage out of whatever they do on here, to know what they have used. Is it imagery or text that is free of rights? Is it not? And if it's not, have you discussed with the right people for the usage of rights? And that's also what I was telling you. I think it's actually a huge opportunity to rethink usage rights, because AI also has an ability to track the proportion of what composes something that it generated. So let's say I take an image of something I don't have the right of usage, and I use something of mine, something personal. I combine those two, and I decide that this image actually I can make communication of, or I can use it in a commercial context. The AI would be able to tell me the proportion of what is what, hence I also would be able to know what I'm entailed to other people. And to give you a great application of that, the other day I was at BETC, which is a French advertising firm, and the legal actually jumped to me and was like, please make this, because that would make my life so much easier, because then I can track down easily who and what and who do I owe money to. And I think that's actually great, because today, that's what I was trying to tell you. Google, I use all of that, but it's invisible. No one knows about it, and then I produce something, and the production of that doesn't account for all of the inspiration I've taken from other people. And actually, maybe here we have a way to track that down, and potentially to create revenue streams for authors and people who, well, today don't get compensated for that. So I think it's a solution, not a problem.
Thank you very much. We do have too much, but we can ask questions after. We'll have a big discussion. From the last question, I think in music it's called sampling, and in literature, la bicyclette bleue. So we go to the next presentation, but by Frederic MARKUS for Féérik Games, and he will talk about games and Metaverse. But he is not here. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, yes.
All right.
Up, you will soon on the screen.
Well, I wanted to say I was very impressed by the last presentation. And as I have a small studio, I just signed up to your website during the presentation, so I would gladly try it as soon as possible. It sounds, I mean, it looks actually very, very interesting, and I wish we could actually link this to blockchain to be able to link authors of content for sure, and be able, as you said, to channel the money where it belongs. So hopefully this will happen one of these days. So my presentation is going to be about games in the metaverse. Sorry, I got to roll back. Games in the metaverse, and what about games in the metaverse? What does it mean, and what are games going to become in them, or in it, if there is only one? So my background is very much into games. Worked for a bunch of companies and worked on a lot of projects of many kinds, whether it's for Ubisoft that was just mentioned, or Epic Games on Fortnite, or many other businesses with Nintendo Japan. Anyway, so
excuse me, do you share
yes.
slides or not?
Yes, hold on a sec.
Because we don't see the slides.
And, that's really weird. You don't see my screen. I'm sharing my screen right now. That's
It's coming.
Is it? Do you see it?
I see something where it's written games.
Oh, okay. Hold on. If I put it full screen, do you see it?
Yes.
You got it? Okay. So that's my career across the in whatever the last, the current company is Féérik Games, which is a company I bought a few years ago, and Epic Games or Disney or LucasArts, Ubisoft, and a few other companies. So games are very much in my DNA, and as I observe trends and what's happening around us in the game industry, I thought it would be a pretty good idea to talk about, the hype around the metaverse, what it means, and what will happen for games in this. So the metaverse has many definitions, of course. I mean, we hear a lot of stuff. I just picked one because I could have picked 100 of them. It's a vision of what many in the computer industry believe is the next iteration of the internet, a single shared immersive persistent 3D virtual space where humans experience life in ways they could not in the physical world. So I picked that one because it mentions that they could not experience in the physical world. And yet it will be a reflection of the real world into the digital world, simply because of being made by humans, or AI trained by humans, or whatever. So even though it has a very fantasy image in people's mind, that it's going to be like a crazy place and everything like that, the foundation of it will be very much driven by human behavior and human bias. And the first, what I've noticed throughout the years is, for me, the first law of what will work and what will not work is that practicality always wins. It wins over quality, even if something is better in quality. It wins over show-off technology. It wins over what you think should be, or what you think should work, or what should be successful. There are a few examples throughout my career and my experience as also a consumer. For example, the Game Boy was black and white. It had many competitors that had color screens and much better technology. But hey, the battery lasted longer than any other portable device. And by the way, Nintendo does that all the time. MP3 format is the worst audio format there is. It's completely compressed. Bass are removed, high-end frequencies also, and middle ones are removed. And yet, because it's practical, it has become the current standard. Actually, the CD has the best format, and I actually have a nice vinyl collection, but yet MP3 is compressed audio. Digital sales are very practical and taking over. Mobile gaming out of nowhere took the biggest share of the market of actually video games, because it's very practical. It doesn't matter what we think about it. The fact that it's in your pocket, that you can play everywhere, any kind of types of games, it's actually winning. It's also very easy to turn the phone on and off, or the content on and off. You just don't have to look at it. It's very simple to use. On the opposite end of things, we look at AR, which is going to be incredibly complicated to make practical, especially when we talk about glasses. We had an experience like this a long time ago when I was at Epic, where we got the Google glasses outside, and we were on our way to E3, the video game show, and they put the glasses on. And we were crossing a street, and as we were crossing a street, the user, a friend of mine, received a notification for an email, for a message. So he stopped walking in the middle of the street while the cars were coming in. So AR is actually incredibly dangerous when used outside. So it's going to take a while before they actually made safe ways to use AR. VR is even worse. It's not gaining momentum because it's actually very unpractical. So it's something we have to remember. The metaverse is going to be what is most practical, because it will emerge from what is most practical. So we can fantasize if it's going to be VR, AR, a mix of everything and everything like that. But in the end, it will exist, and it will actually appear and emerge because of the compilation of what is most practical for us, or else it just won't be. Okay, it's very important to think about that, because the same path is going to be happening and is actually happening for video games. Okay, consoles that are trying to be too close to PCs will disappear. There are no reason to be, and because PCs are becoming more practical, they have lower software prices. If you go to Steam, you can have cheap games, and a PC can be used for many other purposes, like listen to music, browsing the web, typing your report for school, or anything like that. So it's going to become very dangerous for console manufacturers. It is actually still, it is already, Microsoft is already paying the price for it. So practical always wins. It's something to really remember, and you can look at examples around you all the time. Games as we most know them. So this is the view of most gamers and game developers, which are basically like the biggest providers of games. You know, they are making games. So most of them actually are very much into single player games, especially single player games experiences, indie games, story based, and yet a lot of them, and most of them, almost all of them, actually play multiplayer games. Okay, so what they really are actually video games, what they have become through the years, is that if we look in terms of the market, the vast majority of people of players are actually on mobile. There are 3 billion of mobile game players. Okay, it's 3 billion. We're 8 billion people on the planet. 1.8 billion are on PC and 250 million are on consoles. So the console market is actually the smallest market there is of all for video games. Casual gamers and hyper casuals are first, mid-core second, so it's games like Clash Royale and things like that, and hardcore gamers actually are last. It's a very, very narrow market compared to how many people are actually playing video games. And yet, you know, consoles are the loudest, most vocal audience. They are very, very loud on social media. They are very loud on Discord. They are very present, very active, and they actually do not represent what video games actually are nowadays. Okay, most present in number of websites. There are tons of PC games websites, and actually most game makers actually don't know or want to hear about the most popular games at all. They will hear about what they like in their category, but they are not interested at all into what is actually popular. And by popular, I'm not talking about games that sell 10 million units on a PlayStation that has already 130 million units sold, which is a tenth of the audience. I'm talking about games that are played by hundreds of millions of people. Something very specific to us, for example, in the bias we have in approaching or thinking about what the game industry is. And a very good example is there is a very popular game called Elden Ring that every gamer knows about, but no one can actually tell me Elden Ring's story within the game. No one can name me a character. No one can tell me what the story is about. And yet, every single player that plays Elden Rings has stories about playing Elden Rings. Okay? It's the same for multiplayer games. The stories that people talk about are the ones that they are sharing together. It's the experience they are sharing together. So they talk about the experience they just had, or they remember about experiences they had together. And even single-player games now are integrating social interactions, like the Dark Souls series, or even Elden Rings allows you to actually bring friends over or leave stuff within the game, single-player game. Candy Crush does that also. It's basically that the single player game that we were just talking about, how important it was to game makers, is actually becoming itself multiplayer. It's becoming more of a social experience than a single player experience. So I say that most game developers focus on the wrong story. A lot of them are movie makers wannabe or storytellers wannabe. Where the actual real story is the story that players are going to share together and what they are going to talk about while, or after they play the game. So what it means, and that is very important to the future of video games, is that games are social. Okay, they've always been social. When I was playing in arcades a long time ago, we would leave coins on the side of the arcade. When we would see a player that was really good play, we would give that player our money to see the end of the game or to see how far he could go. That was a social experience. Okay, Pokemon at school is a very good example of that. The way Pokemon took off when it was released was not because of cartoons. Cartoons were not released yet. It was because you could link Game Boy together, and before it got forbidden at every school on the planet, you could actually go to your school with a Game Boy, connect your Game Boys together, and share a social friend experience. Yet console manufacturers are still very reluctant to promote crossplay between platforms. They are starting to do it, but they've been very reluctant to say, okay, it's okay if a player that's on Xbox can play on a PS3 or a Nintendo system. They finally are bending on this. They are moving on with this because they know it is actually critical that they do it. Because if they don't do it, it will continue to promote the fact that players need to go away from consoles to actually get a social experience. So if you look around, social games are everywhere, and they've been everywhere forever. They've been here forever. And it's important to understand that because the metaverse will be social first, because it will be a shared experience of people that will basically grow from what is practical in doing together. And it will include many types of media, whether it's movies and video games and music and things like that. So it will be social first. The roots of it will be crucial, will be social, and it's crucial to understand that. It also means that game makers will have to reach another level of maturity, which is basically that what they like is not necessarily what is happening. okay, or a maturity in thinking about what they are doing and what they like about what they are playing. So that's going to be very, very important. So what happens for games in the metaverse? Well, they will all have social interactions, all of them, no exception whatsoever, at many, many different levels. Simple ones will be as the Dark Souls series, for example, where single player experience will still allow you to actually get friends and help from your friends within that single player experience. At the other spectrum of that, there will be games played by 50,000 people, 100,000 people at the same time. Okay, bigger than stadiums. There are already companies working in reproducing stadium experiences on servers, which is 40, 50,000 people. And the next step in the next 30 years are going to be 100,000 or more people in the same experience. Okay, so these are two sides of the spectrum. Unlimited diversity. Because it's a platform where all medium are basically shared at all times, whether, again, it's movie, music, video games, or anything like that. It also means that the content creators are going to come from all over the place, whether they are 7-year-old kids being able to actually, or 8 years old, 9 years old kids being able to actually make a game, to adults and anyone, as the tools basically are getting easier and easier to use to make video games. The number of games and the diversity of games is just going to completely explode, to a point where some will not even be games as we understand what a video game is now. There will be 5 minutes experiences. There will be daily experiences. It's going to go from simulations to very basic toys, very social, fun social experiences, and things like that. So the spectrum of what a video game is going to completely explode. It's, by the way, it is happening as we speak. The vast majority of these games will be free, by the way, as billions of people are already used to free to play. So we have to understand that people are not going to be ready to pay 70 euros or 80 euros for a game. That model is disappearing. Whether we like it or not, that's what's happening. Okay, so you'll be able to open the door of a game, enter that door, and maybe it's going to be you only in that experience, or it's going to be 100,000 people in there. It's going to be free. And it's going to be plenty of types of experiences. And they will play across all platforms. That means you will be able to get into the metaverse from any size, whether it's a mobile platform, whether it's at home, and many other ways we haven't thought about yet, but you'll be able to actually get in there from anywhere. It's already happening, by the way. Everything I am mentioning here is happening. It's not fantasy. It is happening as we speak. Again, practical always wins. So what does that mean? That means you don't need expensive hardware to get in there. It can run on anything. Hence, focusing on realism and advanced graphics is actually very dangerous economically, because development costs and productions are actually going up and up and up and up and up if you're going after photorealism. And you don't necessarily recoup your development cost. As a way to capture an audience, it's not going to be interesting to anyone to actually look for realism or advanced graphics, because everybody will do it. And it's becoming even more obvious with the release of Unreal 5. For example, that shows that anyone very quickly will make something that looks completely real. That's not going to be a problem. So it's going to become very boring very quickly. And by the way, the vast majority of people do not care at all. I mean, they are not interested in photorealism, certainly not interested looking at actors that are really worse than actors that you can see on Netflix. So they and the majority do not care. I mean, we can see that they will play 2D games on mobile and then go play a super hardcore game on PS5 and then move on to another PC game or anything like that. They are not attached to high-end graphics at all. And it's actually a good thing because then mean you can play and you can enter the metaverse from anywhere, any platforms of any performance. It's too bad, you know, Stadia closed up, but the tech is still there. And at one point it will work where the rendering, and NVIDIA is working on this and many other companies are working on that. The rendering is not going to happen on your device. It's going to happen on servers. So it also means that your phone is not going to cost 1,000 euros. It's going to cost 20 euros because it's just going to receive rendering from the outside. That's far out, but it's totally possible already today. Free is the most practical way to play. If it's free, it's super practical. I go in, I play, I don't like it, I go away. It's as simple as that. And that's why it's actually winning, by the way. It's better to play a free game and live it than paying for 80 euros, never finish the game, and not liking it anyway. So free is very, very practical. Friends invites and sharing across all platforms. That means basically that being able to carry with you your social network or your social group, and being able to basically have a group of people that you want to play, I don't know, like a Dungeon and Dragon type of games together. It's not going to be the same as you know, it's not going to be the same group of people that you want to invite to play Candy Crush for half an hour. So being able to make groups or clans of people and move them across all platforms or all types of games is going to become critical. And also within the experience themselves, we call it game flow in UX, in game UX. Basically, a game can be built to be played by casual people to hardcore within the same game. So it's a very vast subject. It's already happening in a few games, especially made from Nintendo, where you can basically play a Mario game in a very casual way, or a Zelda game in a very casual way, still see the end of the game, or you could be a hardcore player and actually go in there and try to be the, you want to actually get all the bonuses, all the complicated levels, all that stuff done. You want to complete the stuff and you want to do the hardest stuff. So within the same experience, the flow of the game, the people can actually pick the flow, their own flow, you know, that curve between boredom and frustration. Games are already doing this. Games in the metaverse will be encouraged to actually do something like that. The metaverse, yes, it's going to be a digital copy of the real world. And yes, it will allow, of course, to do totally crazy stuff that we cannot do in reality. But yes, it's going to be a copy of the real world. Brands are coming in. They're already coming in. You know, brands, any types of brands are actually coming into the video game business right now. It's and on many platforms. One currency, being able to buy anything in video games with one currency is going to become critical. So right now we have many platforms with many games that have hard currencies, soft currencies, and so on. But being able to actually go to something that levels everything up is going to take time, but it's very practical. So it's going to happen at one point. All human subjects will be approached. When I mentioned that basically like there will be a huge variety of games. It will go from fashion to news. There will be games about the news, games about reality shows, you name it. It's going to totally explode in every direction. Just like, to take an example, there are games, there are comics about news, right? Or there are TV show about the news. I mean, there are cartoons about, that are related to what's happening in the news in the world. The same will happen to video games. Anyway, as again, the production tools are going to be easier, and there will be platforms for millions of people to actually experience these new types of games. These type of games will actually explode. And it will go from what the hardcore gamers call matchmaking, which is basically very much like match fighting making, to matching people. Okay, the real meaning of matchmaking, matching people together. So it will be about, and it's already happening, finding people that have the same interest as you for the game you are currently playing, whether you know them or not. And again, this is why the social part of video games is going to be more and more critical to understand. So what should we do as game makers? For example, we need to copy games to learn. That's true for every craft. It's not just playing video games. Playing video games is the consumer part of video games. You have to actually remake them to actually understand what's going on. You don't learn how to cook by eating at a restaurant every day. That will never happen. So you need to actually copy what you see is interesting to understand what's going on and understand the secret sauce. And then you need to learn, as always, and learn and build crazy games, things that have never been seen before, because or else you're not going to be remarkable in the true sense of the word. People will not notice you. It will not happen. You will not be seen in the vast amount of games that are going to be released. They need to be social. So you need now to learn to build social games and understand what that means. You need to create brands, which is basically the discussion, the presentation that was before about basically creating IPs and understanding how you do that. You need to understand self-marketing. It's not a dirty word unless you want to stay undiscovered. You have to understand that, because you will be completely, again, swamped into a sea of content that is absolutely unimaginable right now. You have to understand the different monetization models, like build free games, and understand what that means. Because if you don't learn to do this, it's going to become very, very difficult for you. And if people are developing games, they need to understand client-server code, how it works, or how the architecture works, databases, cloud development, massively multiplayer systems. Building an indie game single player and thinking this is what and where we're going is only going to contribute as a giant filter to who's going to survive and who's not going to survive. And again, it's already happening. So there are 34 new games released on Steam every day. Okay, on mobile, it's even bigger, and that's going to go up and up and up and up. So it's very important, again, to understand all this and to train on the correct stuff and not be stuck in a mindset that has already changed. To conclude, games in the metaverse, they're already here. You might have recognized some of them in the presentation. If you look closely and if you look at the list of parameters I've listed, you will be able to actually say that this game actually belongs to a should be in a metaverse or will be in the metaverse, and some will not be. There are current and upcoming software platforms that are released and some that are going to be released very soon that will be one of the next step, a step closer to being maybe the seed of what a metaverse is going to be. Okay, because again, it will probably start as a social network, and probably start as a social network that starts to blend several medium together. So for example, we see movie previews in Fortnite. You know, the last Star Wars preview was actually visible by players in Fortnite. So that's movies within a game, or concerts. That's why I'm saying the root might actually be something that everybody enjoys in one place and mixes several mediums at once. But we have to remember, practical fun always prevail. Nintendo knows that very, very well. They are the best game maker in the world. They know what's happening. They're already like sharing their IPs with a mobile company to introduce players to their IPs. They know it's happening, but practical is going to be the winner of it all, and fun will win. There's no doubt about it. It's not going to be about but the definition of fun has already changed. The same way the definition of games has already changed. If you look closely at current game platforms, you will notice that. So that's more talk about my colleagues, and make sure that they open their minds and don't get stuck in their mindset, because it's already changing. So that's what I think games in the metaverse will become. That's it.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Yes, the mic is open for questions.
Okay.
So.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Nguyen. I'm just wondering, I mean, at the beginning of the 2000s, there were a lot of people who thought that the metaverse would happen. There were even technologies developed, applications such as, well, I don't think we called them app then, but websites such as Le Deuxième Monde, and it didn't take off really. What happened was a kind of a big number of separate instances of online games, massive or not. And you've listed a lot of changes, and among those changes, which ones, do you think are responsible for the fact that this time it may take off?
No, I think again, something practical will take off. If these instances haven't taken off, it's because they are impractical. So we just have to look at why they were not practical. If they required a PC and they cannot be entered through mobile, it's unpractical. If they require a VR headset, it's unpractical. If it doesn't allow you to have all your friends that you had in other social media, social network, it's unpractical. So it's almost always the same, you know, the human factor is never taken into account by these people that have visions. That's why I gave the example of AR glasses. It's like everybody's talking about Apple making AR glasses, or Google just tried. You know, the problem is not going to be the glasses. It's going to be like, can I not be killed crossing the road by having a notification while I'm in the streets? So that means I need more cameras outside and AI understanding the traffic coming in and the people and the dangers of receiving information while I'm walking. So the reason why these systems are, that's why I'm saying the metaverse, it's not going to be a question of choice. I mean, we're not going to decide and say, this is going to be the metaverse. It's going to emerge from practical systems. You know, I have no idea what the root of it is going to be. All I know is that there are examples of things, of experiences that are played already by 250 million people that no one talks about. Okay, no one is talking about them. Like Roblox, Roblox is one of them, or Fortnite Creative, right? So they can have all the pretentious names they want, like Second World and all this stuff. The matter is that what will matter is that actually it will emerge from what people use and nothing else. It's not going to be necessarily a voluntary process. It's going to emerge, and that's very different from what we think. That's why I'm saying when movies are played inside Fortnite, that's not by design that we worked on making movies in Fortnite. But it's practical and it's fun. I've you know, from my small experience, I find it very pretentious when we approach technology and we don't take into account the human factor at all. And the most important human factor there is practicality. If it's not practical, it's going to die. 3D TVs, anyone? How was that practical? Like everybody's sitting in the couch, and I'm gonna go with my glasses, get a glass of water, and from that angle, I can't see the screen anymore. How is that going to work? Kinect from Microsoft. You can play Kinect, but by the way, no one can move in front of the couch while you're playing. Oh, that's practical. Of course it dies, you know. And by the way, in Kinect, you basically had to be a dancer to win in the game of dancing, and you had to be a tennis player to win at tennis, which is not fun. So not practical, not fun, dead. I think it's important to understand that there are a few factors that need to be taken into account and observe where the emergence of it might come from. In the meantime, the only thing that we can do is train ourselves as game makers, for example, into what is already happening. Because if we don't, the moment it arrives and it explodes, which it's already happening, by the way, we will be left behind. Just like the vast majority of the video game industry, as I know it, you know, I come from the 80s. So I've worked with Nintendo. I've worked with all of them, and none of them are on mobile. They got completely swamped by mobile games. And actually the millions, hundreds of millions of people that have experienced console games for the past 40 years, they are not on consoles anymore. They all left. At a point, everybody leaves consoles. Everyone. Why? Because probably there is 20 buttons on a joystick. There's 20 buttons on a joystick. I can't play everywhere. It's not practical. And the games are not fun, by the way. They are horrible. Except, you know, probably for Mario Kart and things like that. So yeah, I see how much we are trying, you know, to force something into becoming the metaverse, but I don't think it will happen like that.
Another question?
Mm-hmm.
Thanasis Evangelou, teaching media theory at the European School of Images. There are many interesting things in your presentation. I agree with you that practicity is a key. Practical things always win.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, I could describe myself as a metaverse enthusiast, but two things I was troubled by two things in your presentation.
Yeah.
The practical one. You finished with by numbering a long list of things to learn, of skills to learn, that I don't think make metaverse very practical if everyone has to learn all those skills.
No,
and the second thing that troubled me is that you seem to find that the socialization is funny. But you certainly know that socialization is not always funny like in real life.
No, I'm not saying.
So in Metaverse, socialization may not be always funny or not for everyone.
Oh, no, I understand that completely. That's why, so to go back to the list is for people that are actually making video games. Okay? The people that are teaching how to make video games or learning how to make video games do not touch these points at all. They keep doing single player experiences with a little story. Let's say, you know, it's something I mention all the time. Hey, I've got a dog, I'm handicapped, I have to cross France. Here is a game about this. That's not what's happening. The list of, you know, the long list I'm listing is that the people that are making video games have to learn this stuff. They have to learn to make social things. They have to learn how to do backend and server programming, because they are not learning that at all. I mean, they are learning a little bit, but that's already long, you know, long being the standard. Okay, now about socialization, I mentioned that you will bring your group of your social group with you. Okay, so they are already friends, and I think that's going to be very important that you know, we call them, if you look at mobile games, for example, every time you have a game on mobile, you can create a clan. You know, there are a lot of games that are about clans. You know, they are called clans because most of the time they are competitive games. Okay, not groups, clans. It's already, these are people you've met while playing, and they're also friends of yours. So that group is actually very polite with each other. If you, that's why I was saying you can bring a group of people that you've met or you know will be okay to play something like Dark Souls together. It's very hardcore, but you cannot bring the same people to actually go and play Candy Crush. It will still be a group of friends. And no, I never said that social is fun. I'm saying social is critical, because whether you're going to be alone in your game, you're still already in games, being able to bring friends, people that you know to come to help us, that you select. Okay. Of course, it's a nightmare. I have online games that that are, you know, played 24/7. You know, I have you know, believe it or not, but I have the police coming to me asking for IP addresses because of harassment. So I know it's not funny. I definitely know it's not funny. I'm saying it's essential. I think it will be. It's important that that the game makers of today understand that building social experiences with groups of people that are selected, or systems to select people that can enter that group, is critical. Because I think it will emerge anyway from there, probably.
Hello.
Hello.
Small question, I do it in English. Because after your presentation, I understood that there are a lot of things to know for a studio, for game makers, as you said, like marketing, self-editing, copying games, and understanding social problems. And so it seems like a lot. And I wonder whether small game makers can have a, you know, a destiny against big platforms like Fortnite and so. Can we really do something?
Oh, yeah, yes, they will do something. You won't have to do anything. They are already doing the job. I mean, there are already platforms now that are providing tools for game makers. You know, you should look forward to Epic's next iteration on Fortnite Creative. You know, the problem is not the problem for game creators is not going to be able to build these experiences or to learn into making these experiences. The problem is the mindset of these people in getting stuck with tools and games that do not belong to the future of video games. So today, as a small group, you can already learn to make all these things in super efficient tools like Fortnite Creative. The problem is that you're stuck with Unreal and Unity. Because, hey, by the way, they can render, look at that, there is 100 million polygons and you can do photorealism and stuff like that. You know, it's exciting. They are excited by that, but it's the wrong focus. If you're into making games and you're interested in the video gaming experience, there are many tools already that you can use today to gain experiences in these domains, in these fields. We're just focusing on the wrong ones. If what we want to do is games, it's not going to be about programming. Programming is just one side of things. It's going to be about making experiences, and there are many tools that allow you to do a lot of incredible experiences.
I think a lot of small studios still did mobile gaming and tried to create their own IPs, and at the same time they worked for other editors or contracts. And I think even if they used Unity or Unreal for mobile, they could easily go on another tech because they've already got the mindset to making small experiences and hyper casual, and so at least it's the studios I know at the moment. So what would you advise them to go further? Fortnite Creative, I understand.
Yeah, for example, yeah, Roblox. There are many other ones. Oh yeah.
Other ones?
Oh yeah, there are other ones. But everybody's smiling when we talk about them. That's the funny thing, is that the game people, I mean, the few people that are making games smile at what is already the future because they think it's cute. But people, they don't care. They're already gone. They're not interested in this anymore. They've already left. And so they are left alone with a very small audience. But the people have moved on already. So these platforms are there, you know. I mean, it's just it's definitely the mindset. Mindset is the issue. It's what blocks people.
Yes, there's a different question there. Sometimes, well, you say practical always wins, but what seems to be happening is that a lot of spaces that used to be practical keep becoming more and more complex with time. What do you think of that? For example, Fortnite. I played Fortnite a few years ago, and then I stopped playing Fortnite. I tried to get back at it last year, and it was completely oblivious to me. I mean, I couldn't get it, even if I had played it before. I mean, maybe it's because I'm over 40, but what I mean is,
I understand what you mean already. Yeah, it's the it's the other human factor. It's very very hard to understand where your success is coming from. It's very hard. I mean, Nintendo is able to do it. One of the ways Nintendo does the magic trick. It's, you know, there's an entire movie about this, about that magician that shows that in order to do the trick, they have to kill the bird every time. Well, Nintendo does that all the time. What they do basically is that they make games and then they kill them when they see that they are not going to work. They kill them before. So the only thing that we see from the outside are the working ones. Okay? And we say they are freaking geniuses, and they are, by the way. They have an incredible experience. I mean, when you talk to them, they are monsters. Okay, I do presentations about how Nintendo works, and many examples are actually really scary, but they sacrifice everything that doesn't work. Okay, if you don't, and you don't understand from where your success is coming from, you will have a tendency to rot it. It's going to become rotten. You will add features, you will add stuff to it, and you will lose why it worked in the first place. Okay, that's why it's so difficult to actually reproduce any kind of success. It's really, really hard. If you're not ready to sacrifice and throw stuff in the trash, it's very, very, very difficult. So yes, I think nature is like that. Things have a tendency to rot. That's why it's very important to, the colleague is telling me that the movie is The Prestige, basically, where you see that the trick is about killing the bird every time. But the point here is that the focus is not on Fortnite. Fortnite is the Trojan horse. The focus is on Fortnite Creative. And what Fortnite Creative is going to bring, and there were some demos of that before, is that you'll be able to edit your creation in real time on the servers from your PC. So for example, if you create a cube in Fortnite Creative on Unreal Creative, okay, and you move the cube on the editor, it's actually moving on the server where 100 people are playing in real time. So you'll be able to edit your experiences in real time. And there's another very important point about this. The vast majority of games that are successful nowadays come from the PC mod industry. You know, it's actually players and people modifying existing games to modifications, okay, that becomes incredible successes, like a battle royale type of game for a MOBA. All these are mods coming from other types of games on PC. And the reason why they succeed is for two reasons. One is the number of iterations that have been done on the original game is insane. There's been hundreds of thousands of types of games made out of these mods. And two, they are battle tested. That means they are played by people, and people select the one that they enjoy. So what's left is 1, 2, or 3 new type of games that have been the result of hundreds of thousands of iterations and become new types of games because they've been selected by players as incredibly practical and fun. And so in the end, what will happen is Fortnite Creative will generate games that you will be able to play, while Fortnite itself might die on the side by becoming too complicated.
Another question? And maybe we can ask questions to all of the speakers of today, if they are still all here. I think so. So we still have time. If you have any question about crossing all the economy, the metaverse, and the artificial intelligence, it's the time.
I have a question about multicasting experience of network. Do you think that it's possible to think about this kind of experience? Because in your model, you don't ask the question of who the hardware belong to people, a big company, who have the all the medium. The medium is the message. And do you think that it's possible to imagine that some communities could have this kind of experience, have their own metaverse, we can exchange with another metaverse? Because in your model, it seems that the world is unique, the population, the people are unique, and in my view, my opinion, in the modern world, we have different categories, professional, culture, nationalities, and not one people. For me, it's the Babel, the Babel Tower, the metaphor of the Babel Tower. So,
yeah,
but the question of multicasting is very important, because with a friend of mine, Don Foresta, at the beginning of the video, the TV, he imagined that this medium could be bears the knowledge, favors art and science, and so the model was totally fake model for the knowledge, science, and I think an art for me is a problem of art also.
Yeah, that's why I don't really have actually don't have a definition of the metaverse or metaverses or anything like that. You know, I actually remove myself from a complete responsibility of deciding what it's supposed to become or not. I said, if it's practical, it will exist. So if it's more practical that there are multiple virtual societies or vertical, you know, whatever we want to name them, then it will happen. It will happen by itself. You know, I mean, the same way, for example, when you're talking about like the mediocrity of what happened to TV, we can say the same with YouTube, for example. YouTube, now you can take, well, it's very interesting because no one watches TV anymore. I mean, we think people watch TV, but no one watches TV anymore. I keep mentioning to people, when people say, oh, Americans are stupid, they watch Fox News. But actually, no one is checking the numbers for Fox News. No one. And if you check, you will see that at peak audience in the US, 2 million people watch Fox News out of 350 million inhabitants. No one is watching Fox News. No one is. What I mean is that the information is there. If we go to the TV was very impractical because the channels were controlled by, you know, private companies. If I look at YouTube, yes, Google controls the content, and yet now I'm actually able to find incredible content for, you know, whatever my needs are, right? I mean, and I bring, by the way, I bring my clan / group with me of friends into watching incredible YouTube videos about, you know, science and tutorials and architecture and anything, right? It's my group of people. So it's my community. We can totally imagine the same for metaverses, for example, that they will bring their own, not necessarily be like the Google version of it, but they could be different. If it's practical, it will happen. Basically, that's if what, and I think anyway, competition will make that happen one way or another. If people start to witness the birth of something that looks like a metaverse, something that is practical because I can experience many different mediums at the same time, but it doesn't fit me because, by the way, it's done by Google and I don't like Google, or it's made by Apple and I don't like Apple, then they will start something else on the side just for that reason, you know, alone. And then it will actually, you know, be also like culture is also an issue, right? I mean, we know that we don't socialize the same way at all. So I have no idea what shape it will take. All I know is that trying to force it is not going to happen. Trying to imagine it without taking into account these kinds of constraints that you're mentioning, like the social differences or the belonging to groups or the practicality, is an illusion. It will appear as it needs, or it might not, by the way. You know, that also includes that option. Well, means, well, we can't, or we don't want to. Maybe we don't want to. We'll see what happens. But if it does, yes, it will be social, that's for sure.
Another question? No? So, thank you very much for this presentation. I just want to add something. There are some schools when we teach about multiplayer games, the first thing that we say, it's a social, you have to make a social game.
Good for you.
Thank you. And thank you very much for this presentation. And
no problem.
Thank you to everybody here, to all the speakers, and to the lovely public. And see you back tomorrow for everyone who are here.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.